On May 27th, the Texas House voted to impeach Attorney General Ken Paxton. For 4 months, he was sidelined, out of a job, and forced to listen to folks accuse him of all sorts of behaviors that may or may not have been true. We're about to walk in and have a conversation with the reinstated Attorney General of Texas in his office. How does it feel to be back in your office?
It is amazing. It's just great to be back with the people in this office who I know are going to do a lot of great things. It's been hard to sit on the sidelines for 4 months and watch things happen and not have the ability to go impact them. That's what I ran for. And I think that's what the voters voted for. So it's very exciting to me to have that opportunity to be back. And obviously we're just beginning, but obviously I've been thinking about things for the last 4 months, about things I'd want to do when I got back. So now it's just a matter of putting those into place.
So when we're talking about you being back in your office, there are a lot of big cases involving the state of Texas and the federal government, ranging from border issues to protecting kids from sexualization. Which of those, of this kind of long litany of cases, are you most focused on starting off?
Yeah, I think right now it's immigration, just because of what's going on the border. Even today, as we're sitting here, thousands of people are coming up from Mexico helping encourage this along, and obviously the Biden administration as well. So we're just trying to look for every possible angle that we can stop this, because obviously it's having a tremendous impact on this state. And in the end, it's going to impact the entire country. It's shocking, really, to believe that our own government is against us.
Right. Okay, so we can't be sitting in this office today without talking about what's happened over these past 4 months. Had a little vacation. We had a secret investigation take place in the Texas House with unsworn witnesses offering what John Smithy described as triple hearsay as evidence. No public hearings. Came down to an impeachment vote of the House of 61 Democrats and 60 Republicans. It's been said that the Republicans were told this is a loyalty vote to the Speaker of the House. And if taking out Ken Paxton is what it takes to show loyalty, you have to do it. How do Texans fix that? How do we fix that in the Texas House?
It's challenging, because I've been in the House. I was there for 10 years, you know that. And what happens, and the Democrats have figured this out, and I think we just need a more informed electorate that will talk to their state reps before they vote for them. Because what's going on is the Democrats have figured out they can block vote. There's 65 of them right now. They block vote. They go to the Republicans and they say, we'll get you elected as Speaker if you do what we say. We want to negotiate this deal. And so then that Speaker, who's really controlled by the Democrats, only needs 10 Republican votes, and then the Democrats effectively control. So in this case, I don't think it's any accident that the Biden administration's Department of Justice had 2 lawyers involved with the House Investigating Committee, and I think that was the deal. I think the Biden administration was tired of being sued. We'd sued them 48 times in 2.5 years and have been relatively successful with those cases. And I think that was a directive to the Democrats. And then Phelan was like, okay, I can come up with all kinds of ways to do this. Let's just do this. And I think he was directed by the Democrats. So to stop that, I think the electorate needs to know that the Speaker, that these Republicans that are elected have to vote on Republican Speaker without the Democrats. If the Democrats are part of that mix, we're going to lose every time, because they have all these votes. And the Republicans are not united enough to do the same thing the Democrats are doing.
Matt Rinaldi, who's the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, told me when we were filming a documentary this summer that prior to 48 hours before the vote on the House floor, not a single Republican had talked about impeaching Ken Paxton. There had been numerous speeches and commentaries and tweets by Democrats going back several years,
yes,
saying, "Oh, got to take this guy. We're tired of him suing people." Even on the Senate floor, one of the managers for the House, Jeff Leach, who described himself as a friend of yours,
a liberal interpretation of friend.
he used the talking points of the Democrats. In his closing, he used the disproven evidence to slander you. How did we reach a point, General Paxton, where Republicans are helping Democrats achieve their political ends?
It's pretty sad, but I know that even some of the investigators in the House Investigating Committee didn't know what it was until they got there. And I actually had a good relationship with one of them, and I know that he was told he has to vote for this impeachment, even though he told me numerous times in the last few months I was the best attorney general in the country. So I went from being the best attorney general in the country to him voting to impeach me because his career was threatened. He was told that they would not be supportive of him going forward. And I think that's the general message that Dave Phelan operated under and his House managers is, you do what we tell you to do, no matter what it is, without any evidence, and then we'll come up with a good reason for doing it later. And that is, you can tell people, well, we just had all this stuff, but we didn't what they'll never explain is they never had any evidence, and they obviously didn't when they got to the Senate floor. But I think the message was, do what we tell you to do, or else.
It seemed apparent to a lot of observers that the old Bush machine was ratcheted up against you. Johnny Sutton, Karl Rove, folks like that who had not had much to say about Texas politics, their fingerprints were all over this from very early on. It seemed like it started off as a way to benefit George P. Bush.
Look, I think yes, I think this whole coincidence of George P. After 10 years of not having his license, on October 1st, he asked the state bar to get his license back. That just so happened to be that later that day that these employees of mine told me that they had turned me into the FBI. So somehow on that same day, before I knew about it, George P. is applying for his license. I don't think that's any accident. I think that was the first sign that the Bush people were involved in this. And I think you can see from Johnny Sutton representing every one of these employees that he's doing this for free for the last 3 years without ever sending a bill or even having a fee arrangement. That doesn't make any sense either. So we know there's that connection. And then, of course, Karl Rove wrote the editorial, and he was directed and I think given that editorial by Texans for Lawsuit Reform. And so you have all of these Bush connections that sought to get rid of me. They tried first with the election and spending the money there. This, again, Texans for Lawsuit Reform. And then they engaged Karl Rove to help them with this process.
So you brought up TLR. I wanted to bring up TLR. Many of the impeachment charges seemed like slight rewrites of the political attacks that were funded in 2022 by Texans for Lawsuit Reform. This is a group that has been kind of the de facto business lobby for more than 2 decades. Maybe an unfair question to ask you, but have they gotten past their usefulness? Is there still a role for TLR?
Look, I've been supportive of TLR. I was in the House and Senate. I can't think of a single time I didn't vote for what they were trying to accomplish. But they have definitely changed. They become a lobby group. They're beholden to large either corporate interests or individual interests that don't necessarily reflect the views of the Republican Party anymore. And so I don't trust them. Obviously, I saw what they've tried to do to me, and it's if they were still pushing the agenda that they initially pushed, I don't think there'd be any conflict here. But obviously their agenda has changed, and I don't think it's a good one.
What do voters do about TLR? What do voters do about kind of this Bush machine being weaponized against one of the most effective, if not the most effective, Republican Attorney General in the nation? What do we do about that?
I think education. I think people don't know what TLR is, Texans for Lawsuit Reform. They don't know who the leaders are. They don't know the background. They don't know where the money comes from. They don't know what their agenda is. It's not hard to figure out now. We can see what their agenda is, and we can see where their money's coming from. And I think we need to educate voters, because these House members, for the most part, their largest contributions are coming from the Texan for Lawsuit Reform group.
It feels like, when you were just suing the Biden administration, when you were just suing Obama. I remember your lovely bride years ago had written a song about you suing Obama,
yes.
Right? Everyone kind of seemed okay with that, but it felt like one of your lawyers said, there's the old quote, "There's no coincidence," and that when you started targeting big tech, when you started talking about the problems with big pharma, suddenly TLR ramped up their efforts against you. Was that just a coincidence?
I don't think so. I think there's large business interests that don't want to be accountable. And there's a reason that we're looking at big tech, because they control the marketplace and they're trying to control speech and control entire market activity on advertising. There are issues related to them being deceptive and how they advertise, and also in what they tell consumers about what they're doing with their information. Big Pharma obviously involved in this vaccine mandate and potentially getting away with not actually testing their vaccine and telling us it does one thing when it does another. And then there's also the banking industry. So there's a lot of big corporate interests that would like me to just back off. But in the end, I'm not responsible just to them. They are a constituent. I listen to them. But in the end, what's best for Texans is the only thing I need to answer to.
A lot of people were horrified. I think it's or disgusted that the Texas House chose to wrap your personal life into their impeachment charges. You had a lot of your friends defending you. You had a lot of your friends backing you, right. A lot of allies over the years backing you in the face of all that. Were they right to defend Ken Paxton?
So I think this job is really about, am I following state law? Obviously, I've got issues I've got to deal with in my personal life, and I'm responsible for those. But the Texas House is responsible for impeaching somebody that's violated law. And the House had a political motive more than they had a legal motive. We saw that in the trial. And so, yes, I think if the House can be weaponized to do this to anybody that they don't like, and it's not based on law, and we can tell, you already mentioned the fact they had no sworn testimony, they had no witnesses, they had no evidence, they didn't follow the prior elections doctrine, they didn't even have charges that defined elements of actually a violation of law. So it became hard for me to even figure out what it is exactly I'm defending. So the process really does matter. And if you go back to the beginning of this state, the impeachments that we've had have followed this process. They have now created different precedent that scares me for the future of our state that shouldn't be based on anything personal. It should be based on what is Texas law. And if they don't like that law, then they need to have a debate and a vote, and they need to change it.
You and I have known each other for 20 years, which is probably not something either one of us really want to admit. Does Ken Paxton, not Attorney General Ken Paxton, not former state senator, former state rep, is Ken Paxton prepared for what is inevitably the next round of attacks coming at you?
Yes. I mean, you never know what those are going to be. Yeah. All I know is that as long as I feel called to do this job and the voters want me here, I feel like we are in the position of if we don't in Texas succeed, that the country will not be successful and we will not keep the freedoms that our founders gave us. And honestly, what kind of country are we going to be living in? I'm not interested in living in a country where I don't have freedom, my kids don't have freedom, my grandchildren don't have freedom. I want to preserve that country, and I think Texas is the key to that. And unfortunately, we have establishment Republicans like Dade Phelan and others, Karl Rove, who aren't interested in that. They've got their own power base, their own interests that are separate from the best interests of Texans and more about controlling power and money.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.